as far as how to do the mind space thing. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also, you were talking about Western education.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what is going on with that?
As usual. As usual. This is the reason why we don't come up with greater concepts, because we have proven things to be valid only based on the way we was trained. So therefore, if it's not coming from a Western education format, we somehow don't prove it to be valid. Now, this is interesting here because there's some prophecies coming out of ancient Egypt and some stuff called the Hermetic text. Now, the Hermetic text is probably the most important text because the simple fact half the world's science is based off of the Hermetic laws and stuff. A lot of that stuff was introduced into Europe by the Moors, but it was first introduced to the Greeks by the Egyptians, and also later on to the Romans by the Egyptians. In one of those particular things, they talk about this advanced philosophy that we have that in the future will be tainted. It will be something that is turned around to basically fit a person's civilization for commerce and for commerce and capitalism, but in so many words, it would not be a true education. So it would be more of a training. It would be more of a training. Even though you might go through several liberal arts or arts and sciences, there's much more advanced sciences and advanced laws, and I'll give you an example, that the average scientist, the average mathematician, the average person that goes and gets trained in the major Western education, there's advanced sciences that they never get to. So what happened is this. Somewhere in the past 700 years of history, once the Europeans was reintroduced back into knowledge, because remember now, they went into a dark ages after the last temple in Egypt was shut down, the temple of Isis at Philae. And then the Moors actually traveled up and brought them out of dark age. Now this is interesting. How is it that you could have a people that was in Europe for 700 years, and yet they're not even mentioned in a footnote on most books? You see what I'm saying? History Channel is yet to say anything, and they only mention them in passing, but yet they set up 16 universities, University of Salamanca being one of the most famous, and they taught the Europeans and carted up all this knowledge from the ancient world and taught the Europeans for 700 years. You can get the book The Golden Age of the Moors, edited by Ivan van Sertima, to start off with. The Golden Age of the Moors, edited by Ivan van Sertima. But anyway, a part of those particular teachings, some of those teachings of the Hermetic texts, a lot of the advanced science and laws, we see recently that pops up to explain why we've been duped by Western education. And let me give you an example. There was a phenomenon about 2 years ago that popped up in 2006 called The Secret. Oprah dealt with The Secret, and other people dealt with The Secret, and which was the laws of attraction, you see, and that was a big deal. But it's just that the people who actually brought us The Secret never divulged the real sources, or even got deeper into the sources so ultimately you wouldn't think it was something that they came up with. So The Secret was very powerful. The Secrets are one of the 7 Hermetic laws. There's other laws, the laws of mind, the laws of vibration, different types of laws. There are 7 Hermetic laws. The Secret was one of the 7. There's a new book out called The Secret Source. Remember that. It's called The Secret Source, and it says that the laws of attraction are but one of the 700 Hermetic laws. Here are the other 6. So you want to access that book. That book came out, I think it came out in February. So it's called The Secret Source. And what this book is showing you is giving you a glimpse into advanced concepts of education that was never allowed to be for the average person in the West. It was not put into the canon of what we would call basic Western education. And so I want the people to access this book. It's called The Secret Source, and it's by Maja, M-A-J-A, D'-A-O-U-S-T. M-A-J-A-D'-A-O-U-S-T. And Adam Parfrey, P-A-R-F-R-E-Y, Adam Parfrey. This book, these days you only need the name of the book or the author. I got them from Barnes and Nobles was selling them in February. But just to show you, just to give you a glimpse, a refresher of much more advanced courses of things that we don't get. You see what I'm saying? And as a result of the Western education, we've been educated now roughly, maybe a couple of years after the Civil War, the first Wilberforce University. So we've been educated for well over 130, 140-something years, and yet we can't seem, you see what I'm saying, to only be nothing but glorified workers. And we're not even just talking about something that will lift yourself up out of poverty or whatever. We're just talking about, to this particular time, our philosophical aspects of things are so mediocre. Whereas our philosophy, some of our greatest philosophy, came from people that weren't educated because they had nothing in the way to block the divine path of thought. You see, so a lot of times our training shuts down our ability or our creative ability. You see what I'm saying? It's just like Duke Ellington when he was in Central Park, and he said, man, I got to really do this thing now. I'm getting ready, this was in the 1920s. And he said, I really got to go with this thing because I got to get this career going in this music. And somebody told him, you need formal training. He said, I ain't got time for that. And the guy said, well, take everything that you know about music and throw it out the window and start from scratch. And sometimes that's what we have to do. When you're given something, sometimes you need to dump, your cup runneth over with ignorance. See, sometimes ignorance can be also data. It can be data. You might have a whole lot of data, but it might be data that you can't use. Your program is wrong, and sometimes you need to pull out that and start from scratch. But we must have a superiority about ourselves to understand that if something that's coming from our mind does not necessarily have to be validated by Western education. You see what I'm saying? When Western education is nothing but a spinoff of Eastern knowledge, or in this particular case, African philosophy and sciences. So my point here is, and that's when you start fresh with things. And everything we've ever done, especially within the confines of the United States and up from slavery history, we did coming up out of our inner self, which now is standard for a lot of things that we deal with in this country, that now they say you got to have a degree to do. You know what I'm saying? It's about like the Africans in the late 80s came up with the Senegalese braids, and they was braiding all the hair, and they was doing it in their apartment complex, and when it became popular, the government said, no, you got to have a license for that. Hell, you got to have a license to validate something that you didn't even create. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's just interesting how, America eats its young. Yes. You still on?
Okay. I'm here.
Yeah.
Do you want to take some calls now, Bobby?
You got any more questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted you to also, before we go to the lines, I wanted you to talk about the atmosphere, like with the tsunami, what was going on with that situation.
Well, they're always creating things. They're creating things because of HAARP. They can, they have the ability to create the weather. As a matter of fact, glad you said that. We do know here in Atlanta, in tracking this thing, if they didn't, and see now they got it to the point where, they have the HAARP machine, which is a machine that modifies the weather. You've heard of these things.
Yeah.
Now they can do it through chemtrails, which they get in a plane and shoot this stuff out in the air. And it's a multiplicity of things that chemtrails can do. Can control your hormones in your body, can make you sick, can shut you down, but also it's a weather modification chemical. So what they do is, especially in Atlanta, they would go up in the planes and they would shoot this